Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with special guest William-Meyer, and he's here today to share with us his new book, 3 Breaths and Begin, a guide to meditation in the classroom. Now, William has long taught history, economics, and humanities in urban and suburban high schools, where he's also taught meditation in various forms. He has worked with fellow educators in workshops and professional development courses, is the author of 2 published middle reader novels, and is currently working to augment his MA in education from Harvard with a PhD from NYU. So let's welcome to the show, William-Meyer.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
What an honor it is to have you here, and I'm so excited that you've got this new book out. I mean, it's making such great reviews.
I'm pretty excited about it as well. It seems like I've lived the book for a long time, and it's great to actually see it in print and those ideas on paper as well.
Well, and so I have to ask you, what started you down this path of meditation?
I began it a long time ago. It actually was my own interest when I was in middle school and adolescent as well. And I think it was just a desire to both cope with the demands and the stresses of school and the expectations of parents and myself, but also my interest in connecting to something bigger. And at that time, my uncle had gotten wind that I was interested in this as well, and he actually introduced me to a Buddhist monk in Detroit, of all places, and that was sort of the beginning of the journey. And at first, I just used meditation to help sleeping a little bit better at night, and then I started to find it helped with my work. And what was funny is as I moved into the classroom as a teacher, I began to see how meditations sharpened the day as well and became a tool for me to connect with my own intuition and connect with my students on a deeper level. And it was probably around 2010, 2011, and 12 that I started to bring it into the classroom. I'd seen how powerful it had been in my own life, and I just felt like this is something that I think students would benefit from in this sort of environment of high-stakes testing and standards and assessment. I think there is an even greater need now than there was before when I first was introduced to it 30 years ago.
Well, heck, gosh, I look back and, when I was a kid in school, I'm like, I wish I had this then.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, like how it's played out in the response of the students, and actually not just the students, but I'm part of the meditation club, and we host a meditation circle every Wednesday at lunch, and that circle has grown. And just the other week, we had some visitors from the community who had come in to sit on the circle, and we've had administrators sit there and secretaries, and it just is, I think, a larger need and desire to find a little stillness in the midst of all of the distraction and noise that permeates schools and communities and just our lives today.
Well, and so when you made the decision to incorporate meditation in the classroom, what was like the pivotal moment that you're like, hey, I've got to start doing this?
Yeah, I think the big shift, interestingly enough, the first thing that happened was a student wanted to do a science experiment to see the benefits of meditation, and he asked if I would join the experiment. And that was I remember it was in the fall of the year I first introduced it, and I started to see how students were responding to just these simple, silent meditations that he was running. And I thought to myself, ooh, this would be kind of cool to do a meditation with a class. And I had this elective that I had been teaching, that I just started teaching that year. And in that elective, there was a lot more freedom and space to explore self, but we were also exploring issues of equity and access. And I thought, this could be a great way of helping students to delve into issues around their own identity. So I think I led a guided meditation right before the Christmas break, and it was like, boom, it was unbelievable. And I remember sitting there after the meditation and letting the students go around and share their experiences, their thoughts, their insights from that simple 12-minute piece. And each one was really powerful. And I'm just sitting there thinking, oh my, is anyone else hearing what I'm hearing? But, I'm trying to play it cool. Of course, this is what I expected. This is what I thought would happen. And then I just started to bring it more and more into the classes, and actually began to bring it into my history classes. And then students asked me to run meditations before sports events and playoff games, and then in whole school assemblies. And it just became this sort of default tool that everyone started to access more, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, it just took off on its own.
Sounds like immediately you became an overnight sensation.
Yeah, it was a little bit more of a slow burn, but it definitely just escalated. And the following year, I had a parent reach out to me, and since that parents had reached out to me, we formed a meditation circle of parents every Thursday night that meets in different houses within the community. And I come back from my own home to lead guided meditations with the parents. This past year, some of the faculty have asked me to run meditations before department meetings. And we actually put together a fellowship, a meditation mindfulness fellowship of teachers, so we could begin to expand the work. And I kind of, as I was growing this and experimenting and learning, I thought it would be really great to share some of these tools with a larger audience, which became the inspiration for the book, and weaving together my own stories and experiences in the classroom with hopefully what are some practical and accessible tools for teachers and educators and parents if they're interested in it.
That's, I just love hearing how these movements and these changes take place, and I just love your story. And most importantly, I love your book too, Three Breaths.
Thanks.
And so when we look at this, when people talk about breath meditation, I mean, why don't you share a little bit about the history of it and what breath meditation is?
Yeah, I think that piece, the breath, is really the access point to meditation. And I think if you look at these sort of monastic and contemplative traditions, the breath is a way of focusing the mind and the intention. And students are incredibly good at focusing, and they're often hyper-focused, but they're not often intentional about what they're focusing on, or that intentionality is conceded to someone else, an educator or a parent or an adult or a peer group. And I think by beginning with the breath is something we all have. And I often joke with students, as long as you're breathing, you're doing it right. And it's a place that they feel, I think it's easy for them to feel like, okay, I get this, I can do this. And that tradition, it's interesting that something so old that dates back, and you can look back to the 3rd and 4th century, where you have these the desert fathers going into the desert of Egypt, sort of have these contemplative moments where they're seeking to escape society back in the 3rd and 4th century, and we still seek that desire today. How that simple act of intentionality around the breath is something that a 16, a 17-year-old can drop into so easily today. It's something almost in our DNA. It's something universal. There's a deep desire for stillness within all of us. And the interesting piece, and I try to bring this into the book, is in the more recent history, you have monastics like Thomas Merton or Thich Nhat Hanh, who've made this practice accessible in a large scale, and even in terms of the mindfulness movement. But at the core of it, it's just finding that focus. And maybe for a monastic, there's a spiritual orientation to that focus, while to a student, there might be something physical or emotional, or with a relationship, a challenge in a relationship. But the practice itself is the same. And the breath becomes the entry point into that deepening practice, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense, and I find it fascinating. I think a lot of people, when they look at meditation, especially as we get older, we're like, oh, this is going to be really tough, and you're going to teach this to kids, and they're so busy and hyper, it's never going to work. But you found that to kind of be the exact opposite.
Yeah, I do think, though, that with students, I have also found it has to have tangible benefits. Like, students are really tough critics, in some ways a lot tougher than adults, who will put up with a practice or an idea for longer without complaining or pushing back on it. While students, I find, if they want something real. And what's amazing, though, is when they do access something that feels very real, like a visualization in meditation, they can drop into it, though, more deeply in ways that adults can't, because they don't have these extra layers of almost disbelief. And I think that is what's surprising. Of course, numerous times I've run meditations, and there's always snickering, or there's sometimes snickering, I should say, in the beginning, or students who feel uncomfortable. It's disconcerting to close your eyes in a group of 20, 25 students or peers, or to sit in a circle with a teacher, for sure. But what's amazing is usually the second or third time, if I mention, oh, we're going to do a meditation today, it's as if I said, we're going to show a movie. Actually, it's even more, the response is even more positive and more engaged. And I think that there is something that students understand about almost the dysfunction of what's going on around them in a way that adults have normalized. And for them, I think meditation and that capacity to go inward is so important for them to make sense of themselves and themselves in the world. And meditation or breath or a guided meditation offers them that window in a way that few other things in their lives are giving them.
Well, and how true that is. It gives them this opportunity to have that peace, that stillness, and just be able to be present. And my goodness, they're so advanced with you teaching them this in life skills. I mean, that's going to be something that works for them their entire life.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool, because I'll get random emails from students and stories. I had an email from a student who I'm out on the East Coast in New York, and a student who'd gone to college, or is in college right now in California, and he sent me an email that he had gone out on a hike with a group of friends, and when they reached the ocean, he said, we should do a meditation. And he sat down and guided all of them in a meditation, which just is amazing to me at how some of these practices have lasted and been internalized in ways that totally unsuspecting for myself and what I ever intended, but they are a part of their lives. And I think, to me, it's less, if they don't meditate, again, that's fine. That's my goal isn't to create a bunch of all these people obsessed with meditation, but for me, it's a reminder. It's a way of being reflective, and I think that piece is so important, that as they go forward in their lives, to pause, to find reflection, to become intentional and authors of their own actions. And whether they use meditation or some other tool, like going for a walk or getting out in nature, that's what's most important. I think meditation is probably one of the most effective ways of doing it, but just for them to have that peace so that they don't wake up when they're 30 or 40 or 50 and wonder how they got where they are. Rather, they wake up very present to where they are, knowing that they've been an author of the life and the story that they've created, to me is probably some of the most powerful aspects of the work and what I can offer them.
What do you ever get feedback from the parents on how they feel about you teaching the meditation in school?
Sometimes one of the most positive feedbacks is actually from this group of parents who meditate on Thursday nights, and that group has shifted and changed, but there's always a good core group of 8 to about 12 parents who come every Thursday night. I have never received a phone call, never received an email that's been negative in any way towards the practice. And I think there's a couple things that make that true, and I try to mention this in the book. One is that meditation can't just be dropped into a lesson or a class. It's not something I lead with. It's something that I bring and integrate into the class. I first hold a very high standard in terms of my expectations academically of the students, and then I bring in the meditation. But I think the second piece is probably the most important, and that's so many parents who just want to know that their kids are being cared for and that their kids are being seen in a deeper way that is beyond just a score or a grade. And if those pieces are true, if there's that relationship there with the students and there is that trust there with the parents, the possibilities are endless. And I think meditation fits into those possibilities as something that is unexpected for many parents. They're kind of shocked to hear that their sons and daughters are sitting silently or sitting in meditation, but it's something that they're completely open to. And I just had a student step on my class like 2 days ago, and her father is a surgeon, and she was asking what recommendations I would have for him around meditation and mindfulness because she sees how stressed he is. So it's kind of a reversal of roles where in the past I would often hear from parents about their concerns about their kids suffering from all this anxiety and stress, and now it's actually students who are practicing internalizing these practices that are seeing this in their parents.
Well, what a wise question to ask,
Yeah.
Young girl. Trying to make sure she can bring that home as well. Do you ever get any pushback from the students saying, well, isn't this like a religion, or I'm going to get bored doing this? Do you ever hear any of that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't. I think a couple of things is when I often try to teach it, particularly or introduce it in the ninth grade when I am teaching world religions, and then I'm able to use the lessons of world religions as a framework for entering the practice in some regard, but I never use any imagery or language that would be tied to a specific religion or denomination. I think probably more concerning to students is not, is this religious, but is this a waste of my time? And that's where, when I lead guided meditations with kids, I really, really try to be intentional and purposeful about what I want them to get out of that meditation. I talk a little bit towards the end of the book, and there's some excerpts from students and about reflections, but I talk about a class that I started teaching last year, and it's a hybrid online in-person class, which is called Beyond Mindfulness. And in that class, students, as part of that class, students actually have to create their own guided meditations. And that is such a learning experience for me as I listen to what they think is of value or what challenges or issues that meditation can help them solve. And that sheds so much light and provides me with so much insight into their minds and their worlds that also guides the guided meditations that I bring into the classroom. And I think being and connecting to the pulse of what's affecting students throughout the year allows those meditations to be more tangible, whether it's related to stress, relationships, identity, the future, the past, reflection, empathy, just seeing themselves in a broader context. There's so many different issues and aspects of self that students are working through that it's honestly, I've probably led hundreds and hundreds of meditations with students, and very rarely do I repeat the same meditation twice. When I have different groups, and I know it's a group that hasn't meditated before, there's a few types of meditations that I'm pretty confident will land with groups and students, so I usually will open with those. But once that initial piece is established, that trust, and I think, okay, these students know what's going on, they've experienced this, then I just go with it, and I see what they bring and they're feeling and they're experiencing and try to meet them in those places. And that type of flexibility as important. Just like you want to have sort of guidelines and understandings, and I sort of go over a whole host of those in the book, but it's important to work with what works for you. And I think that authenticity rings true for students. If they feel you're not being authentic, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're meditating or trying to teach a lesson, it doesn't fly. And that also keeps me honest in my own practice, because I have to be embodying what I'm offering. I mean, you can't offer what you don't have. And I think students can really sense that. And it's enriched my practice in ways that I could never have imagined or thought of.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand being 100% authentic, because they'll pick up if you're not,
Absolutely.
Oh, my goodness. What are some of the most interesting places that you have practiced meditation?
I have had the chance. I've led students on trips all over, but one of the cool trips that we took is I took a group of students to France and England. And while we were in France, and I mentioned this a little bit in the book, we had a chance to meditate outside of Chartres Cathedral, which is one of the high Gothic cathedrals of the 13th century. And it's about 60 minutes outside of Paris. But what's so cool about that cathedral is there's actually a labyrinth in the center of the cathedral, and outside behind there's a labyrinth in the garden. And getting to sit with students in that labyrinth and lead them in a guided meditation was like really, really incredible. And actually on that same trip we went to Glastonbury, and at Glastonbury there's the tour, which is almost a three-dimensional labyrinth that some people connect back to Druids and an earlier period, a pre-Roman period, and we actually hiked to the top. And again, students looked at me and were like, can we do a meditation? And I said, sure. So in both of those cases, it was really the students who took the lead in terms of initiating that, hey, we're in this really powerful space. Let's use it to sort of facilitate some deeper reflection. And I did. It was great.
How exciting that is. I mean, when you look back in your career and to this point, it must be just really interesting how meditation has impacted your teaching as well.
It's hard to believe when I sort of see how these threads have come together. And I was recently just having a conversation with my wife, and in ninth grade, I think I wrote a paper on a monk, Thomas Merton, and then I brought him into this book at this point in my life after having been teaching, and I see this way in which it's offered me space to really be my full self as a teacher in a way that if I didn't have a practice or didn't have these tools, I think I would struggle to do that. And because I'm able to be my full self, and because I'm able to really be reflective about who I am, I think that resonates with students deeply who are struggling and trying to make sense of their own lives and their own place in the school and the broader community and the world. And that the type of reflection and the type of exploration is healing, it's connecting, it builds community. And I think those, to me, are the foundations of real teaching and learning. It's an exchange, both. It's not a one-way exchange from the teacher to the student, but it's an exchange between both. It's almost like a communion, and the meditation piece enriches that in so many ways.
This is so exciting. What I'm sure there are critics that are probably saying, there's no time for school meditation. Kids need to really focus on, other things. What's your feedback for that?
Honestly, if we don't make time for meditation, what are we making time for? And at the end of the year, and even the following years, when I ask students what they remember from classes, few of them can even remember what we covered the week before, let alone the year before. But it's amazing how when they meditate, sometimes on a research topic, or they meditate on a particular individual that we're studying and think about their perspectives, how that makes it tangible in a way that reading it or just studying it doesn't. I understand the stresses within schools. I actually teach AP U.S. History, and this is a class that probably doesn't even exist in the way it's envisioned in high schools. It doesn't exist in this format in college, but we're asking students to cover an entire history of the United States in something like 7 months, particularly in the East Coast when we start in September. So there is so much pressure, so much stress. If we can't make time, whether it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 minutes once a week or once every couple of weeks for students to take a breath and to think and find some stillness and some peace, there's no space for them to process all the things that are being thrown at them. And I sort of see meditation as that opportunity to let things settle, begin to let all that information, all those ideas settle, and it's really in that space that students can make some conceptual leaps that they would never be able to make if we would just continue to rush and push forward in the content and the curriculum.
And isn't that the truth? My goodness. Oh, my goodness. You know, Bill, I mean, we can spend hours talking about your work and your book, but unfortunately, we are out of time, and we want people to pick up their own copy of 3 Breaths and Begin. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
That's a great question. I mean, they can reach out. My website is william-p-meyer.com, and they can also find me on Twitter and Instagram under Bill P. Meyer, and love to hear their thoughts, love to connect with them, and just continue to expand and build this conversation. I think there's a lot of power and a lot of potential here, and it's just really beginning.
And one quick question before you go, and it has me kind of thinking, are you also teaching maybe other educators how to bring this practice into other schools?
Yes. I've worked with a lot of different groups of teachers, and that's one thing that I really enjoy doing. And I've recently just, if people are interested, they can reach me through my website as well. But I love to run workshops. I've recently just ran an afternoon workshop with a group of teachers, about 50 teachers, in elementary school around bringing these meditation, these practices of reflection into the classroom. And I think that is sort of the next steps in the process, and just seeing what happens when other teachers bring these same ideas, these same tools into their classrooms, and learning from them as well.
Gosh, what a difference that will make. I mean, all these young people getting such a head start in life with some really relatable, life skills that they can use no matter where they go. My goodness. Definitely. Well, Bill, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I love the questions, and I just love having conversations about this topic.
It's been such an honor to spend this time with you, Bill, and thank you so much for sharing your new book, 3 Breaths and Begin. Again, if you're looking to pick up a copy, you can at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie bookstores. If you'd like to connect with Bill, you can at his website, william-p-meyer.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Mary Ann airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmaryann.com for more information.